Hi, welcome to another IELTS video. In this lesson, I'm going to demonstrate how to respond to an academic Task 1 data source that presents a line graph. If you find this video helpful, visit my blog at IELTS.com and join us at the forum IELTSnetwork.com. As you've learned, mentally preparing yourself for the response is the first step to take when engaging an academic Task 1 question. So let's identify precisely what it is we are looking at. The question reads, the below chart illustrates marriage and divorce rates in the UK during the latter part of the 20th century. Compose an article in at least 150 words outlining the trends depicted here. So here we see a single data source that presents three different data trends. The data source is a line graph, and the trending items illustrate first marriage, divorce, and remarriage rates in the UK between 1961 and 1999. Okay, so we must now mentally categorize this data into broad details, minor details, and minute details, and then decide how we are going to arrange these details into a logical response. So, broadly speaking, all trends are of a varying nature, with first marriage rates moving in an inconsistent but general downward direction during the period in question, and divorce and remarriage rates show modest but also inconsistent increase. The minor details among these trends are a little easier to define, as there are segments of clear direction within each trend in this graph. So first marriages, for example, show modest increase between 1961 and 1970. So this would be our first minor detail. There is a significant drop in these numbers between 1970 and 1977, and then a fairly consistent decrease until about 1993, when mild acceleration occurs to the progression of the trend. So those would make up the four minor details we will share in our response when addressing first marriages. And of course, we would want to use minute details to punctuate any significant points, among the minor details, such as the starting and end points and points of change within the trend. Divorces appear to accelerate in number between 1961 and 1972. And this is followed by a period of modest growth, which gives way to a plateau and perhaps even a modest decline. So we could say there are roughly three minor trends that we'll mention. Remarriages follows a very similar pattern, and we should be sure to point this out in our response using comparative language. Remarriages show the same acceleration between 1961 and 1972. And this is followed by a period that appears to be much more of a plateau than we see for divorce rates. So we can say that remarriages has two clear minor trends. Okay, so now that we have an overall feeling for the broad details and the minor details, we would be ready to create our response, or our written version of the data that we see here. So just a reminder, minute details refer to the specific numerical references we make in the response. Of course, we are not going to share specific figures for every single year across every single trend. So as I said, minute details are shared at points where the trend evolves. So in other words, points of change. These points of change are like little signposts. Okay, so let's have a look at the general structure that we're going to follow. And I will zoom out a little bit here so that you can see this more clearly. Okay. I would describe this data source using 3 paragraphs. So the first paragraph being a general overview. This is where we would state the type of data that we're looking at. So this is a line graph. We would state details about the graph, what it shows exactly. And in a second sentence, we might share the broad details that we mentioned at the beginning of our talk in this video. Paragraph 2 and paragraph 3 are the areas where we do look into more detail of what's going on in the trends. So paragraph 2 would look at the rates of first marriage, and we would share minor details and punctuate these, as we were saying, with minute details, so specific figures. In the third paragraph, we would analyze the divorces and remarriage rates, and we'd be using a lot of comparative language to compare these rates, not only to each other, but also to the first marriage rates we looked at in the first analyzing paragraph. And the reason that we are grouping divorces and remarriages together is because they do pattern each other quite closely. So there are several things that, several ways that we could couple the information, and this would help us to be more concise in our writing. Finally, the response would be finished with a conclusion, and this may simply reveal the final figures seen in one of the trends, or it could be a comment on the entire task 1 data as a whole. Okay, let's read the response together. Please try to note where these sentences would fit into that skeleton that we were just looking at. The graph shows marriage, divorce, and remarriage numbers in the United Kingdom between the years 1961 and 1999. There appears to be a somewhat negative relationship between the first marriage rates and the rates of divorces and remarriages. According to the data, there were just shy of 350,000 first marriages in 1961. This value grew in a slightly unstable manner to a peak in 1970 of 400,000 before dropping to 270,000 in 1978. What followed this was a period of very gradual decrease until 250,000 first marriages were hit in 1991. This downward progression accelerated mildly until 1999, when first marriage numbers were roughly 200,000. Divorce and remarriage numbers, however, moved in the opposite direction. There were roughly 25,000 divorces in the UK in 1961, and over the next decade this number swelled to 125,000. A period of modest, yet unstable, growth then occurred and carried on until about 1984, when a plateau of just over 150,000 was reached. Light variation around this value continued until 1999. Remarriages showed a similar growth, accelerating from 50,000 in 1961 to 125,000 in 1971. The remaining period was marked by a relatively stable plateau of roughly 120,000 remarriages per year. So I hope there are a few language points in that response that you can adopt and apply to your own Task 1 writing. Of course, the ultimate test of any academic Task 1 response is whether the reader could recreate the data source based on your description. And I think this is possible here. We've qualified the trends clearly, and we have used fitting comparative language to frame the manner in which the trends either move with or against each other. So I hope that mock response helps demonstrate the motions you will need to go through to pull together a successful Task 1 response. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.